Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, world. It's me, Dennis. And hello, Veronica Torres.
Hello, Dennis.
Well, now, the first thing that we talked about while we were before the show is that you just published a book. It went live yesterday. For God's sakes, tell me about it. I know nothing about it.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's called The Journey of Consciousness, A Warrior's Tale, and it's live in both paperback and ebook version on Amazon right now, and you can still even order it and get free shipping by Christmas, so that's like a very exciting thing. We worked extremely hard to meet that deadline, and it's thrilling to get to be at this point. I'll tell you, it was a lot of work all summer long.
God, what was your impetus for the book? What drove you in that direction, Veronica?
Well, I channel 7 different groups, and one of them is the warrior, and he is from a time when there's castles and dragons and swords and riding around on horses and all that. And what happened is I started channeling the warrior, maybe it's been almost 2 years ago. I don't remember the exact date. And he came in, and his first few messages were just sort of about who he was and what his deal was. And he was huge. His energy was so big that it felt like my entire body got 2 inches bigger and then snapped back into place. And the next day I was sore from head to toe. And he was really kind of scary. And he had this big, loud, booming, scary kind of energy, and he was a warrior, and he wasn't afraid to talk about it. And, he basically said, all you light workers try to be in denial of the fact that you have so many lifetimes where war was a very common thing. We're here to help you heal your connection to that warrior energy. So after like about 3 weeks of that, 5 or 10 minutes of each of our meetings would be him coming in and talking, he started telling this story. And every week he would tell another chunk of this, what we came to call a fairy tale for grown-ups. And he would just pick up where he left off for a year. Just pick up where he left off telling this story, and it travels through all these different adventures, and he ties every single thing that happens to him back to how it can help us right now in 2011, almost 2012, with our spiritual journey.
God,
And
Veronica,
it's amazing, if I do say so myself. I mean, when I would be editing, I would read one page and be laughing just uproariously. The next page, I couldn't even think. My brain would just stop with what he was talking about, and the third page would make me cry. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary journey, and I'm so proud of this book. And it required so much work to bring it to publish. I'm just thrilled about the whole thing.
Oh, Veronica, I'm so happy for you, and I'm so happy for us. It's one of these win-win situations.
Thank you. It's quite an unusual book, and there's not really anything like it that I know of floating around out there. And the warrior he's a cool dude, man. He is a cool dude. So,
Well, Veronica, can you tell me a little bit about your spiritual evolution? I know we're going to talk about a little bit of it, but I've been so curious about you as a little girl and as a teenager, and what the evolution of your consciousness, what you thought about this, a power greater than you are, or what was going on in that time. Where were you physically on the planet at that time? I don't even know when you graduated from high school.
I graduated from high school in Sacramento, California in 1986. And I grew up,
Okay.
I was born in the San Francisco Bay Area, but at 2 we moved to Sacramento, and so basically I grew up in Sacramento my whole schooling. I lived in the same house, went to school with the same kids for my entire schooling career. And I remember as a child feeling a lot of responsibility for the world. I used to, at night, we had this big big glass window in the front of our house. It was really big, like a big, huge piece of glass. And I would go, after I went to bed, I would wake up and I would sort of walk out to that part of the house, and I would put my hand on the glass, and I would say a prayer for everybody in the whole world. Yeah. And I always felt that sense of, I knew everybody was struggling, even as a small child. I knew everybody had a struggle. And I would always just feel like if we could just get everybody to have even a few moments of not feeling struggle, it would make a huge difference in the world. I'm kind of getting emotional telling that story. I haven't told that story to very many people. So when then I was, my grandmother was a very important spiritual figure in my life, and she lived across the street from us as I was coming into my teens. And she was a Christian, and she would go to regular Christian church every week.
Yeah.
So I started going to church with her, and one of my favorite memories of being at church with her was she'd sit with all the older ladies, and they would put lotion on their hands, and of course they would always pour too much, so then we'd have to all rub our hands on each other's hands to spread the lotion around. And it never occurred to me until, like 20 years later, they would do that on purpose so we could all hold hands and have that sense of community. So that was actually that's the best memory of going to church for me, is holding hands with all the old ladies and spreading the lotion around, the smelly, super smelly, rosy scented lotion. That was my favorite part of going to church. Before that was in my early teens. Go ahead, sorry.
No, continue that, because I'm looking at it from a testosterone-based existence, and you're from an estrogen-based in that sense as we're growing up, and the difference between I'm one generation down from you in the sense that I was 1966, went through high school, so I'm 63 now, and so one generation down, and so here you are. What was your perspective? What was your perspective of spirituality, of what you were hearing, both from the Christian base, and then how did that evolve? Talk about that.
Sure. Well, when I was in the church environment, I've always been sort of, tell me how to get an A and I'm going to get an A. So for me, I thought, well, I suppose you're supposed to read the Bible. So every night before I went to bed, I would read the Bible. And so I finished reading the Bible before I graduated from high school. I'd read the whole thing. And I remember one time in that same church, they had everybody, of a certain age, under 25 or something, stand up, and then they would say, have you ever read, the Lord's Prayer? And then, they would have people sit down as they went through these chunks of how much of the Bible you've read. I don't even know why they did this, but they did. So at the end, I'm like the only one standing who's read the entire Bible in this huge 3,000-person church. It was a huge church. It would be televised on TV. It was a big deal. And also then all of my little old lady friends were like, oh, Twitter. They're like, oh, looky, it's our girl who's read the whole Bible. So, of course, I felt like, yeah, I got an A, right? It's all solved. But of course, I always had to deal with, the idea of sin. You're a sinner. Even if you're trying to be a good person, you're still sort of saddled with this idea that you're a sinner, God's pissed at you, and good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
You never are going to know if you got an A until you're dead, and then it's too late to fix it, which I always thought sort of sucked. Right? It's like, oh, this is not good. I can't win. The odds are stacked against me. I have no freaking chance. I'm not pleased with this. I liked better odds than that. And then one day, this was actually kind of a turning point. One day, two of the people that we always sat with said they're not coming to that church anymore. And I said, why? And they said, well, the pastor preached something we don't agree with. And I went, oh, you're listening to him? I mean, I was sort of like, kind of like it matters what he's saying. I don't know why I had a disconnect. I just figured what he's saying was the truth because he's the pastor, right? Authority figure issues. Yes, I had some. And so he's the pastor. And so they, thought about what he said, didn't like it, and decided to stop going to his church. And it was like an epiphany for me. Oh, really? You mean that's part of it? It's allowed to say the pastor is full of crap? Huh? So that freaked me out. And then I thought, oh, my God, I could be on the wrong path. You see, I could be on the wrong path. If these people who I respect are going to quit the church because of one sermon, this guy could be leading me down the wrong path, and I'm not going to get an A, and I'm not going to know until I'm dead. This is really, really dangerous shit here now. I got to get out of this. Yeah, so it was very confusing to me. Very, 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 very confusing to me. That really tweaked my brain.
But what happened next? How did you take that information and that experience, that emotional and spiritual shift, and go, now what?
Well, yeah, it was now what? It was now what? Now I'm in my 20s, and I'm not living in Sacramento anymore. I'm living in the Bay Area, and I don't know what's going on as far as that goes, so I'm just trying to get an A and being a corporate climber and, doing the sort of 3D thing, and my spiritual life was kind of on hold because I didn't feel like I knew a clear path. It was like there's no clear answer here.
Yeah.
And then I had some stuff happen to me that was pretty revolutionary and, very, very difficult. Very, 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 very difficult. And I had to climb out of that hole. And the way I climbed, I climbed out of the hole was by asking myself, basically, what do I believe? What is true for me? And reconsidering everything I was ever taught, literally. Like everything anybody ever told me was right. I had to think about that and say, do I agree?
Was this your dark night of the soul experience where you had to go all the way to that place and go, hey, am I going to continue path here? Details are not as important as the experience that you're willing to share with us.
Yeah, it definitely was. It definitely was. It was what you would call a dark night where your very sanity feels questioned and you don't really know, everything under your feet is gone. And I'll share with you that at one point during this time I sat down on a bench. I was with my family and we had an antique store and we were shopping at a thrift store to see if there was anything to put in the antique store, and I walked out of the thrift store and there was a bench out front and I sat down on it, and I swear to you I would never have gotten up off that bench. I know it with every fiber of my being. I just never would have gotten up. And they literally had to pick me up and put me in the car. And that was the lowest point. That was the point at which, it could have gone either way. It really could have gone either way. If they hadn't been around at that moment, it's likely I would have just become, one of these people that you see.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't have a path out of it.
For the grace of the universe, go on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've been I've been down there pretty far, and it informs my journey. You can't get past it, So when I started trying to discover, what my truth was. Now you'll like this story. This is a very interesting story. So I was working at a big bank in their corporate center. We never touched money. We just pushed numbers around on our computer all day long. It was very thrilling. And I lived in a cubicle.
This is afterward, right? After you came out of this.
This is right. Yeah, this is right in that same time. It's like when I'm trying to heal, I'm trying to get out of this dark night of the soul that I was in. And I'm still working, still going to work. I don't know how I did it. I, honest to God, don't know how I did it, but I did. And I still was going to work, and our bank had merged with another bank. So they brought in like 100 temps to try to manage all of the paperwork and everything that happened to us. And this gal comes wandering into our area, and she says, basically she says something like, am I on the 3rd floor? And we're like, no, you're on the 5th floor. And she says, am I in such and such department? And we said, no, you're not. And she said, oh, well, I think this is where I'm supposed to be. And because there were so many temps running around, we just said, we'll just keep you. You seem nice. It doesn't matter. We'll just take this one. Just give us a body, basically, was how it was. It was so crazy. So she sat down in the cubicle next to me, and cubicle is kind of a laugh because basically all they were walls to hold up our desktops. They were literally 2 inches above the desktop. Those were our cubicles. So there was no privacy. It was just ridiculous. And she and I would talk because the work, of course, was absolutely boring and tedious, and I hated it. And I would get 8 hours of work done in like an hour and a half and have nothing to do all day. So I would talk to her. And she turned out to be a metaphysically oriented woman who I'd never met before. I'd never met anybody who didn't, wasn't Christian, basically. And we would have these conversations, and I would ask her questions, kind of like what you're asking me, like, how did you get the way you are? and she would respond, and I was like, damn, I think this feels right to me. Right? There's something to this. So she said, now you have to remember, at this time in my life, I wouldn't even walk down the aisle of the Tower of Books that had tarot cards on it because I thought they were devilish, okay? Yeah. And I used to feel sad for the Bibles that were in the used bookstore and the thrift stores because how could they possibly be alone? That's awful, right? This was my mindset. Yeah. And so I was talking to this girl, and she was answering these questions, and I was just completely tripped out by her. Like, she just blew open my brain. So one night on a Friday at 5 o'clock, she reaches into her handbag and she pulls out some photocopies. And she says, I want you to read these, and we'll talk about them on Monday. So I'm sitting at home, I'm reading these photocopies, and they're just random pages of a book. I don't know what book, I don't know what author, I'm just reading these random pages, and I'm like, this is the truth. Now, mind you, I've read the entire Bible at this point and never had this feeling. This is the truth. So I said, okay, this is the truth. So, I'm there early for work on a Monday morning, which never happened because I hated going to work. And I'm waiting for her to come. And I said, oh, my God, who wrote this book? And she said, well, that is actually a very interesting question. And it turns out it was Emmanuel's book, channeled by Emmanuel. And what is it, Patricia Rod? What is her first name? Where's that book? It's right here on my shelf. Pat Rodgast channeled Emmanuel's book.
Right.
And because I already knew it was the truth, I could not doubt the source. This is how the universe worked. And that changed everything in my life. That moment changed everything in my life. So she started giving me books, and then I ended up getting a deck of tarot cards, and I would do these tarot readings for people. No one taught me. I just turned over the cards, and I would start saying stuff to people, and it scared the living crap out of me. Just scared the crap out of me. Because I knew stuff about people. At the time, I was dating a guy who had, my God, how many brothers did he have? He had 125 siblings. I don't even remember how many. There were tons of them. And then they all had so many babies that it was just insane. You'd get together, and there would just be hordes of children running through the house that all looked the same, no matter who their parents were. The genes in that family, you knew just what you were going to get if you married in. I mean, I swear to God, they all looked the same. And they would just run through the house and have a great time. I don't know how many there were. I couldn't keep track. And one of the brothers wanted to have a reading. And so he is sitting in front of me, and all of the sisters and wives are standing behind him. You can just imagine it. It's like a movie.
Oh, God,
and yes, it's crazy, right? And so I didn't know anything about their family. All I knew was there were hordes of children running around, and he had about 4 or 5 of these kids were his because he was Catholic, so they were just making babies left and right. So I'm turning over the cards, and I'm explaining what I'm getting, and basically I'm telling this man who's like 20 years older than me, who has a family, who has a wife, who has a house, who has all these obligations, and I feel like a little kid. I'm in my early 20s. I'm telling him, you're going to lose your entire life if you don't straighten your shit together up.
Yeah.
And all of the sisters and wives are standing behind him, 4 or 5 or 6 of them, nodding their heads at everything I was saying. And his demeanor was collapsing. His shoulders were going down, his whole, and I'm just sitting there feeling like, I don't I can't do this. I don't know how to be this person who can hold that space for, because just being the messenger, that's not what this work is about. You can't just be the messenger. You have to hold space for people too.
Yeah.
So
what
I stopped. Yeah. So I stopped doing the tarot card thing as much because that, before it was kind of fun, and then it turned into holy crap, this is like responsibility and real. So I stopped. I kind of backed off a little bit on the tarot card thing, but I kept studying. I must have read 300 spiritual books in a year. I mean, I constantly was studying, constantly trying to understand. That dark night of the soul thing that was still unfolding, just the who I am, what I'm doing here on this planet. How do you get an A? I mean, I'm sure that was still in there. How do you get an A?
That will never go away.
Probably not.
No, I mean, as just a part, like in the same way that I will never grow hair on top of my head anymore, and I have to accept that as just the way it is. But that's just part of the way you are. So continue.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm probably about this time I'm married. My marriage isn't going well. I kind of don't know what the hell's going on with me in general. Things are just kind of mixed up. And I'm still reading, I'm still studying. I'm sorry?
Are you still corporate?
At this point, no. I had started working for my chiropractor. And so I was working kind of in alternative health offices, helping them out, getting their offices
energy is
set
energy, right? So that's
Yeah.
you're seeing yourself move in, or at least what appears as I'm observing this, moving toward that energy direction.
Yeah, And all kinds of interesting things that happened. Like I worked with a homeopathic doctor, and she would she would order homeopathic remedies, and I would restock the little cabinet that we kept them in. And one day I reached out to pick up a remedy to look at the name of it to know where to put it, and it sent a shock up my arm so strong that I screamed, and she came running out from her client's consultation to make sure I was okay. And I'm like, what the hell? And she said, oh, that's a remedy that I barely ever order, and I only ordered it for someone who's extraordinarily mentally disturbed. I said, well, we're going to have to be careful if you ever order it again that I don't touch it. So I learned that I could experience homeopathic remedies just by touching the vials. So I started to realize something's different about me. You know, I'm sensitive in ways that is uncommon. And I think that was a big exploration of my late 20s is I'm sensitive, and how do I deal with that?
You know, Veronica, I look at reality in the same way that I look at light, in the sense that there is this visible spectrum that you and I can see. But that's not the spectrum of light. We go from ultraviolet to infrared, and so much of that, just because I can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And it has so your sensitivities are broadening to things you can't see, and you have to convince yourself that you haven't gone insane.
Yeah. That sort of sums it up. Realizing how sensitive I am and understanding how to move that in this world. And I think that
that's so much that little girl who put her hand on the window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a real straight line, a real, not straight line, but certainly a continuation of that.
Yeah. 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 She was a cool little chick that nobody understood. She had a big...
Reconciling that.
Huh?
Reconciling that and bringing her to here and saying, dear, we want you at the table. I want you at this table, and I'm actually going to listen to you. I'm going to bring it. Tell me how that went forward.
Well, you know, there's a little part of that story that I think would be really interesting to add in, and that's that before I went to the big church where there were 3,000 people, I went to a different church. God, it could have been the same church. I don't even know. But it was in a different location. And I remember telling the pastor, well, you know, every night I pray for the whole world. And he told me that I wasn't supposed to do that we only pray for individuals, and that it was wrong to pray for the whole world. And so it crushed that sort of, you know, that feeling in me that this was something that was appropriate. It made it wrong. And I didn't know. You know, I'm 8. I don't know that I can say, screw you, asshole. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. And why aren't you praying for the whole world? You're supposed to be the pastor of a huge church. You know, I didn't know to say that. That wasn't the personality I had back then. Nowadays, I would laugh in his face. But today, it would be like, or then it was like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So that threw. Another thing happened at that church was that we got a new Sunday school teacher, and I was so excited because he gave us binders to keep our work in, and I thought, oh my God, I have a binder. I felt like such a grown-up. And he said, I love you so much that I'll throw you out the window of this 2-story building if you don't pay attention in Sunday school. So that's why we stopped going to that church, now that I recall. I told my mom because I was crying after Sunday school because I believed him, and she said, okay, well, we can't come to this church anymore. Honestly, the story starts to clarify in my mind. Yeah. That's a pretty rough experience. And Sunday school.
It always fascinated me, you know, this idea. I mean, I love Richard Feynman the physicist. It was so cool because he talked about how his problem with religion and what the concept of God is that it isn't big enough for the stage. And because whatever it is, the possibility of whatever love is, whatever that principle that we want to say, is so much bigger than I can quite in my own limited perspective experience. And the minute I do so, the minute I run it through some human-made institution, it limits what it could possibly be. And those were some of the things that confused me. Like I was really trying to understand when I was back in that position what an all-powerful, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent being needed with hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seemed to me a little bit of an overkill.
Yeah.
And I couldn't quite get that. I mean, just from a logical perspective. I mean, I thought about that, so I had to work my way through with those things. And so you were going through this process then. Well, how did you get? What happened next in your evolution?
Let's see how it went. I'm trying to make sure it goes chronological, which sometimes is a challenge for me. Well, like I said, we'll just tell the highlights and we'll figure out what order they go in. I was married. I was unhappy in my marriage and very confused about what you're supposed to do about that. And I was attending a weekly channeling group and learning a lot about myself and just always trying to grow, always trying to grow, always trying to grow, always trying to grow.
Yeah.
And I had a session with a psychic who was also a channel. He channeled Merlin that day, and Merlin said, you're going to become a channel, and people all around the world are going to know who you are. And I went, yeah, right. Nice one. Can you just help me have a better marriage, please? And he said, well, this is the truth. And I said, yeah, okay, you're on drugs. That's all right. I'm not interested.
Yep.
No, thank you.
Yep.
And we went on a little while longer, and it was in the back of my head. And, of course, it's sort of that thing of, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this the answer that I've been looking for all these years?
Yeah.
And I was still doing a little bit of the tarot stuff and all that. And I ended up a couple years later, a friend of mine called me up from work, and she said, oh, wait. See, for some reason, I always tell this story out of order, and I missed the important thing. So anyway, I moved to Sonoma in 1999, Sonoma, California. I meet some friends at a yoga class. They asked me if I want to do chanting with them. And I said, okay, let's do chanting. I'm just trying to make friends. I have no idea what we're going to do, but I'll show up. So we do this chanting thing, and it was kind of trippy. And at the end, I was really in an altered state. And we sat down in a little circle. There were about 5 or 6 of us there. And all of a sudden, this voice came out of me, had a message for one of the ladies in the circle whom I'd never met before, and I don't believe I've ever met again. And after like 3, 4, 5 minutes, said, we are the Elohim, and we are pleased to have been with you today, and was gone. And I went, 1, I know exactly what that was. That was channeling. 2, it doesn't scare me, but it makes me feel so conspicuous, I cannot have that happen again. And I started to cry, because I was just overwhelmed by the conspicuosity of having that happen. Because, of course, everyone's staring at you then. And wondering, what do you got? Give us some more. What's next? Wow, that was cool. Everybody thinks it's so cool. And I'm like, ah! So no, that didn't happen again for like 2 years.
Sure.
And then that's when a friend of mine called and said, somebody at work just told me my biorhythms are off. Do you know what biorhythms are? And I said, well, I don't know what biorhythms are, but I know what chakras are, and I could look at your chakras and tell you what's going on. And she said, really? Okay, I don't know what that is. Let's have coffee. So we got together, and we started talking, and we had some conversations over a period of time, and finally I said, well, if you're interested in all this other stuff, maybe you'd be interested in this channeling thing, because apparently, that's part of my journey. And she said, yeah. So we would write down questions during the week, and on the weekend we'd get together, excuse me, and we'd try to do this channeling thing. And I had no idea how to do it. I had absolutely no idea. No one ever taught me. I just sat there and said, okay, let's do it. And it worked. Strangely enough, it exhausted me, but we would get really interesting information. And after just a few months, Elohim said, this isn't just for the 2 of you, get a group together. So the same people that I had chanted with, the same house where I had done the chanting, I called her up. I said, do you think some people would get together for this? She said, hell yeah. So we got together, and I just said, I don't know, here we go, basically. And that was in 2002, September of 2002, and I've had a weekly meeting every Wednesday night since. I think we've only missed twice.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
What a fascinating story. So what have you learned about yourself from this, and because then you began to go, what was some of the evolution, what you're learning about Veronica?
Well, you know, the main thing that's come out of it is I have to at least be able to live it on some level for them to bring it through. So I'm the guinea pig.
Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's how it works with us. I don't know if it works that way with every channel, but that's how it works with us. So I'm the guinea pig.
Every human being I have ever met, that is just a wonderful, yes, thank you.
Yeah. So we're trying it, they try stuff out on me, and then they bring it up in the group. Most of the time, that's how it works. So I learn a lot about myself because I'm in the pressure cooker 24/7 pretty much. Apparently, I'm stubborn. I didn't know that about myself. People say, you didn't know you were stubborn? I said, no, I didn't know I was stubborn. Apparently, I am. I really honestly, I think I suspect that I don't believe I'm stubborn. However, apparently, it's obvious to everyone who knows me and to, of course, Eloheim and The Council that I'm stubborn. I learned that I can do things that feel, Eloheim and I described it as almost nearly impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Almost nearly impossible. Because, I was channeling Elohim for 5 or 6 years, and that was that, and it was great, and everything was fine. And then you know what happened? Oh, you'll like this story. So all that time, I had been looking for the guy who'd predicted I'd become a channel, because I thought, hot damn, I should have another reading with that dude, right? So all these years, I would Google him once every 6, 8, 10 months, and I never found him. Never one iota. One day, I'm on one of the Yahoo groups that I post on, and he pops up. And I'm like, holy crap, there he is. So I sent him an email. I said, do you remember me? He said, of course I remember you. I said, well, shit, I need another reading. So I have a reading with the guy, and he says, oh, by the way, you're going to start channeling a completely new group. And I'm like, asshole, no, thank you. I don't want to, right? I'm like, once again, this guy gives me information I don't want. Like, why can't he just say something that, I don't know, makes me feel fuzzy inside instead of freaks me out and challenges me to the core of my being? I said, I'm not gonna. No. He said, oh, yeah, you got to go to a higher level of the, I don't necessarily buy into all the galactic hierarchy crap, but he does. And so I know from his perspective what he was telling me was valid for him. And he said, you're going to go to another level of the hierarchy. And I'm like, Elohim's my bro. There's no way. He's like, oh, no, you're still going to channel Elohim. I'm like, well, why would Elohim get less time? It's like saying, I'm not going to spend time with my husband because I'm going to go date some guy on the side. It kind of feels like that. I'm like, this is a very intimate relationship. I'm not just going to timeshare it out, right? He's like, no, this is what you're going to do because this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, yeah. So here comes the stubborn part. 2 years later, one night we're just channeling along on a Wednesday night, and Elohim says, uh-oh, hang on, what's going on? Uh-oh, hang on, what's going on? Uh-oh, there's a new energy that wants to come in and talk to you guys. Boom. New energy comes in and talks to them. All of a sudden, I'm channeling somebody else. What the hell? What the hell? Right? And they're amazing, like totally amazing. Elohim comes back in and starts to cry and says, basically the way we could describe it to you guys is that was our guides. Our guides have come to work with you guys, and we are so honored that, it'd be like the Pope coming to teach, catechism class. Like, they were just freaked out. They were just totally freaked out and so happy. And I'm like, well, God, if it makes Elohim happy, then we'll do it. It's kind of like that situation. Well, now then that just started the whole thing. Next thing you know, boom, 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 we get, a new council member every month, and all of a sudden I'm channeling 6 different groups every Wednesday night. And they're each different, and they have completely different personalities and different energies, and they require a different thing of me, and they move my body in different ways, and they use different kinds of cadence of speech. And Elohim said, okay, look, there's a 7th one. I said, no, I won't do it. And they said, look, seriously, we'll give you a little break, but there have to be 7. And I said, you don't understand. And they said, yeah, we do, but there has to be 7. And I said, fine, we'll have 7. I mean, even now I'm almost crying because it was such a big deal to say, fine. It's almost nearly impossible, and I did it anyway. That's what I learned about myself, is I step up to the plate. I don't rest on my laurels, and good enough is very rarely good enough. So then we let the 7th one come in, and now we have the whole council, so now there's 7. and they correspond to the chakras, and they each have different roles, and they each have different things. And then every once in a while, like last week's meeting, they start showing you how what one of them's been teaching you ties into what the other one's been teaching you, and your mouth just falls open, and you go, oh, my God. And they're like, yeah, there is a plan here. And I'm like, yeah, but it's so hard to know that there is a plan until you guys show us there's a plan, and then it freaks me out because it's so beautiful how it all fits together.
God. And always, always, always Veronica has to go first.
Yeah.
You know, it's always been the way with any of the teachers that I have truly been able to work with or to resonate with me. They always go first. I don't care whether it was, it doesn't matter. Choose your teacher. It only is resonant if the teacher is willing to go first.
Yeah, like as an example, right? Last night I'm watching this NOVA program, which is a repeat from 2011, called Fabric of the Cosmos Quantum Leap.
No shit. I mean, are you kidding me that you are talking a language?
Ah, okay, and so it's going to be...
Brian.
Yes, so it's
Green.
Brian Green, yeah, and so it's about quantum mechanics, which I knew a teeny bit about, but certainly hadn't studied it in any recent history. So I'm just watching this thing, and I'm so tired, and I'm like, I want to go to bed, and they're like, just keep watching. I'm all fine, so I just keep watching. Wake up this morning. Before I even get out of bed, Eloheim starts in on, this is what tonight's meeting is going to be, and basically explained how they're going to tie quantum mechanics into everything they've been teaching us for 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever number of years it's been now. And I'm all, you're going to do what? They're like, yeah, we're going to tie it all together. I'm all, tonight? They're all, uh-huh. I said, really? They're like, oh, yeah, we're totally excited about it. And then they proceed to start telling me. And I'm like, wait, just a second. I got an interview in a few minutes. I got to, like, do the laundry. I should probably have some breakfast. So let's just wait, okay? Give me just kind of hold that thought, like permanently hold that thought. So tonight, knowing, but they kind of downloaded into me in a nonverbal way, and it gets me spun up. And so I'm all, I have to calm down in order to do my interview. And then I have to try to calm down in order to nap. And then I have to try to calm down so I want to eat. Because you know how when you get really excited, it's hard to eat? If I don't eat, I'll crash. So I have to calm down to eat so I don't crash because they're going to wind me up because they're going to tie quantum mechanics into the 9 years of teaching they've given us tonight. Because last week they told us how we can live as fractals. And if you haven't seen that YouTube, you got to rush to go see it. They tied together how we live. It's just at the end of it, I went, that explains my entire summer. It explains so many things that have been happening to me. And it just starts to unfold in me all these understandings of the different layers of reality and how to access them. And I'm all, okay, and now this week we're going to do quantum mechanics. And I'm just like, okay, cool. Tomorrow it'd be really great if I wasn't paralyzed the whole day, so that I can actually, maybe vacuum the carpet. That would be so great to get the carpet vacuumed tomorrow. So could we put that in there too? Because, on Thursdays, a lot of times I can't function because we have our Wednesday night meetings. So on Thursdays, sometimes literally I'm paralyzed, usually not for long periods of time, but there are times when I actually cannot move my body at all. And last Thursday, I was trying to make it from the bathroom back to the couch, and I was taking steps that were like 3 inches. Each one, that was all I could do, was 3-inch steps. And I was sort of trying to calculate, did I have enough energy at 3-inch steps to make it all the way to the couch, or was I going to just fall down on the floor? And I made it to the couch, so I was really happy about that.
God, that's wonderful. Have you done any internal work about one particular? Have you done any? That's fine.
It was just kind of a cute question. I liked it. I mean, just
wasn't it?
I was wondering where you were going to stop. I was like, please God, let him keep going, because if he just says that, I just don't know what to say.
Anyhow, have you done around the world turning their attention toward you and the 7, and through both this book, the kind of attention that's going to be coming toward you, dealing with it from both an egoistic and from the other aspects of that? Do you do any work around that, or how do you approach your coming notoriety, fame, expression, adulation, etc.? All the things that
Yeah. Well, I was very, very uncomfortable with the idea of being a public figure for a considerable period of time. And at the beginning of 2011, I said, look, this is crazy. I have all this material. The people who have found me find it to be the most profound material they've ever heard, and that's not me saying it, that's them saying it.
I hear you.
And yet the community is very small. And I look at other channels and I think, why do you guys have so many people that want to hear what you have to say, and I have so few people, and I have to blame it on me. And blame is the word. I'll own it. I blame it on myself. It's my responsibility.
Yeah. You bet.
So I said, okay, fine. I'm just going to suck it up and be a public figure. I'm just going to suck it up. I'm just going to suck it up. It's a nearly impossible thing, and I'm going to suck it up once again. So I said, fine, I'm going to be a public figure. I'm going to start publishing books, because I figured that was a way to become more of a public figure, is to have books out there. So we've published 12 books in 2011.
Cool. 12 books in 2011.
12 books in 2011. And some of them have gotten a little bit of traction, and some of them have not gotten much traction at all. And I started broadcasting my meetings on the internet so anybody in the world could participate, and that has some traction, but not a ton. And I still know that it's me, and I still go, what else do I need to do? And I don't know the answer to that question. I'm comfortable being a public figure now. I am a public figure. You know, I am. And in my little circle, I'm a bigger public figure, but in various places, you know. I mean, I had somebody recognize me at a coffee shop once, so I mean, that has happened. And I'm okay with being a public figure now. I think part of really what happens for me is I'm a single woman, and I do a lot of this work by myself. I get lots and lots and lots and lots of help with the books. I mean, extraordinary amount of help with the books. But as far as, like, you know, the dishes and the laundry and the vacuuming the floors and the going to the grocery store and all that super 3D stuff, I have to do all of that myself. And that, I think, is one of the main reasons that that's one of the blocks I feel. At this time, I believe, is one of the blocks to me being able to be in a different energy to offer my work in a way. I don't know. This is a big mystery for me. You really hit on the edge of Veronica's growth right now. That's the edge of me, is why is this work not reaching more people, even though I have a website and I have 250 YouTube videos and I broadcast on the internet and everything's archived and I have 6,000 Facebook friends and I have 3,000 Twitter followers. Why is the community not huge? I don't know the answer to that question other than, you know, tonight we're going to talk about quantum mechanics. How many people are into that? I don't know. Maybe that's part of the problem.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, some of what to give you my feedback on it,
yeah,
or what
please.
I'm experiencing is that what I'm offering as a communication consultant and how I'm working. Suddenly, people in 2011 and 2012 are coming in and going, my God, this is wonderful. This is exactly what I needed to hear. I was saying much the same thing a few years ago. There is a timing aspect of it. Mm-hmm. The world is lining up. The awareness and something is happening that has to do with, and I'm not talking about calendar-wise. I'm just talking about the consciousness of human beings has reached a critical mass in some ways, that there is a fertility that where the seeds that you might have cast last year out didn't sprout. My feeling is, and deeply, I mean, my God, Veronica, you're holy shit. I mean, you are literally one of the most fun, evocative, delightful beings. And I get to talk with a lot of people. I'm talking about human being, one human being to another human being, and it's just such fun. And this is exactly what the world is both hungry for, and I'm going to see what my deep truth is that this sprouting, you're going to see the same seeds, and suddenly sprouts are going to be coming up where you in the past it just seemed fallow.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's one beautiful compliment. Wow. And two, it matters a lot to hear that, because it's one of those things where you, like you said, you know, you cast the seeds on the same ground over and over again, and you think, why isn't that sprouting yet? And maybe it's just like you said, the season. It was in the wrong season energetically.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the work. like the video from last week that I was referencing, the YouTube video from last week called There's More Here. It's a 32-minute video, which normally, the YouTube attention span is pretty short, but it's a 32-minute video. It got 400 views in 2 days. Now,
Yep.
I have 200 videos on there that have been up there for years that have only gotten 400 views in 2 years. So perhaps your intuition about this is shifting. It certainly is revolutionarily powerful information, and blows my mind. Blows my mind.
Well, it is, and that's what I'm experiencing it. I'm experiencing it all over. I mean, I literally talk to people from around the globe, and there is something wonderful. I felt that when the internet happened and the synapses, it was almost like the consciousness, human consciousness got connected. So it's taken a while, and that's developed because from the moment that I could learn about you to the time I could actually be having this conversation with you was literally about 9 days. Now, think about that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. What would it have taken for me to get to you? So if that span of time is shortening, and then there's a quickening in each one of the spirits of each one of the people so that we can count on, absolutely freaking count on, that the same thing is happening where we can't see it all around, and all our job is step into it. It's time. Es lo tiempo. It's the time.
That's really interesting. I really deeply appreciate that picture you just painted, because that makes complete sense to me, and it sort of lets me take, I just feel like I can exhale a little further than I have in the past about this whole subject. As another example, a guy emailed me last night about 10:30, and he has a Lightworker website in Canada that's in the French language, and he wanted to know if I would be interested in having him, or give him permission to translate some of the stuff I have into French to share with his audience, and perhaps even do some kind of a joint venture where we translate some more, a larger amount of material into French. And I wrote back to him and said, wow, this sounds great, let's talk about the details. And he wrote back immediately, said, oh my God, it normally takes me weeks to hear back from people that I approach. I can't believe you wrote to me so quickly. I thought, well, I was sitting here, so I want my book translated into French. Of course I do. So you offered, and I'm going to write back to you and say yes, because I want that. So
that is just terrific. What fun! What fun! And tell me anything else about the book, on the launch of the book, or anything that you'd want any of the listeners to know about this particular venture, or how can we keep up with you and the tips and tricks to make sure that we're intersecting with Veronica Torres in our own personal orbits and our ways, so that we can enjoy this journey too.
Sure. Well, I have a website, Eloheim.com. That's ELOHEIM.com. And
that's on the link.
Oh, good.
That's on the link right there on the website, on the little console of anybody listening, and you can click there, and you can also download this episode so you can listen to it on your iPod or whatever you want to do.
Oh, beautiful. That's great. I'm also on YouTube, and that's YouTube/Eloheim channel, and I have 250 videos now, and of course those are all free. I also offer subscription plans so people can receive the audio download and the video replay of our meetings automatically by email, and those are very, very reasonable price. It's starts at $10 a month, so it's extremely affordable to keep up with us. The meetings are broadcast live every Wednesday night. It's only $6 to join that. And then once a month, and it happens to be this coming Sunday, on the third Sunday of every month at 1 p.m. Pacific, I have a Q&A with Eloheim where the folks on the Internet get to take over and ask Eloheim questions and participate that way, which is a real fun thing, because sometimes we'll have people from 5 different countries asking questions, and we've really created a nice little online community. And, people were writing me emails and saying, God, I wish I lived in Sonoma so I could be part of your group. And so I realized, wow, how can I create community for the people who don't live nearby? And I realized, well, if I created a a webcast where they were the ones that got to ask the questions, then they could build community with each other. And sure enough, that's happened. So the people who come on the webcast, they know each other, and they'll chat in the chat board with each other ahead of time saying, how'd that turn out with you, that thing you talked about last week, and et cetera, et cetera. So we've created a nice community around people getting to ask a question of Elohim. And then they ask these really great, powerful questions, too. So that's a lot of fun. We have a good time. Elohim loves the Q&A day, and they're just absolutely silly the whole time and really have a lot of vibrancy around the Q&A day. So that's a good way for people to be in contact. I offer private sessions if people are looking to have a one-on-one chat with Elohim. That's on the website as well. And I have a newsletter sign-up where you can be kept up to date on the latest and greatest things that are happening. So those are all the good ways to stay in touch. And, of course, the books are on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and all those places. Like I said, we have 12 right now, and we're working on we should have 2 more in January, I would say. Because what happened is this is an interesting thing, I think, is one, I always wanted to have the Elohim material transcribed, but I didn't feel like I could afford a transcriber because obviously that's a lot of work. One day I get this email from someone who says, I would like to begin transcribing your work as a volunteer. I'm like, oh my God, really? How awesome is that? So she started, and she's done like 2 million words. 2 million since '09. So when I want to write a book, I just, I have this gigantic Word document, and I search through it, and I create, that's one of the ways that we do it, is that's how come we can do so many so fast, is because the transcriptions are already done. Then, of course, they have to be edited, and my God, typos and all that stuff worked out. It's not like it's not like I wiggle my nose and it happens. However, it does happen much more quickly than, say, if I was constructing a fiction book. Then again, if you factor in the amount of time it took to channel it and all that stuff in the beginning, it probably works out about the same.
Probably. Yes, I don't think that there is any, I don't think there's any getting around the creative process.
And the editing and the typos.
If
you're a perfectionist, be an author and let it just completely mess with your mind. Your eyes will see something that's not there. They will just read right past that typo every single time.
Every time.
You and 5 of your friends will miss that typo, guaranteed. I believe what actually happens is when you do the laundry and socks go missing, they're actually turning into typos. And then typos are horny, and they have lots of sex, and they make babies all the time, and it's the babies that are the bitch to find. So, you can't get ahead of the typos. You really can't. You can just hope to, have like an unfertile period right before you go to publish or something. It's just absolutely insane. I mean, it's like the craziest thing.
Oh, that's so cool. So how does your perfectionism and your sense of humor, you're able to deal with those two so that your perfectionism doesn't paralyze, as it does so many of us, that I realize that I've just asked a question that we could talk for hours about, but give me a little bit in this last 7 minutes about how you deal with that, because all of us, so many of my clients and I do that, have that aspect of me that many times I will allow to end up paralyzing me.
Yeah. Well, I think I used perfectionism as an attempt to control my life and to get certainty. And I know now that certainty is a fallacy, that success is a mirage, that really it's just about how you react to your creations and how you actually experience what is going on in your life. And perfectionism is still in there, and I also recognize that what I wanted from perfectionism I never received, which was comfort, right? I wanted comfort from perfectionism. If it's perfectly right and I get an A, I will feel safe, I will feel loved, I will feel protected, I will feel like everything's okay. For a nanosecond maybe, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So perfectionism, I think it's a good trait to have a strong degree of observation and awareness if you're going to be an author, as people expect the words on the page to be right. If you're just going to be a person, in my just being a person life, am I feeling all perfect? No, not really. And what's even more interesting, actually, or what I should say is not more interesting, but the thing that has been interesting me lately is the concept of failure, and looking at feeling like a failure in how the temptation to succumb to failure, the idea that, you've tried hard and it hasn't worked. Like we were talking about earlier, all my marketing efforts have not expanded it to where I'm getting 1 million hits on my website a year. It's not happening. So am I a failure? And it's like, I can't be a failure. Have I failed? Okay, have I failed? Well, I don't know. What I've attempted hasn't created the outcome I want. And, outcome is Elohim's least favorite word. They hate the word outcome. Because if we're focused on, did I get a specific outcome, a lot of times we're missing the experience that we're having. So that's the place that I personally, the edge of my growth is examining my relationship to perceived failure or failings and the desire for specific outcomes, imagining that, if I had a great husband, my life would be easier instead of just, different and things like that. Imagining, does a certain level of awareness of my work or a certain amount of money coming in create a sense of safety in me, or does that, what does that, how does that affect how I feel about myself?
Could we in a future conversation continue that process, because so many of us deal with that particular issue?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful place I think it would be a wonderful jumping off place. I would love to hear more from you and share with you about that, because it's a lovely place to sit down and roll up our sleeves and sit down in the middle of the floor and go, well, how are we going to deal with this?
Yeah, I would love to talk more about that, because like I said, that's my edge. That's the edge I stand on right now and look at my life from that edge of the temptation here is, because the outcomes have not lined up, is to fall all the way into failure rather than simply into fascination about, okay, like you said, maybe it's fertility. Maybe it's always been a fertility issue rather than an effort mistake, right? And so if I go into failure, all I'm doing is cutting myself off at the knees for actually experiencing what's really happening.
Exactly.
Which might mean just keep spreading those seeds.
Exactly. And it's like looking on my desk. Have you ever tried to find something on your desk and it's right there, yet it's invisible to you?
Yeah.
That's what happens to me. It's like it's invisible to me, but my panic, I will then not be able to see it.
Yeah.
And just relaxing and believing and going, okay, well, and suddenly it's right there. My awareness is there.
Yeah.
Oh, Veronica, God bless your little heart. Your big heart. You're amazing. Thank you for this hour. It has gone by fast as any hour I have ever spent in my life in conversation like this. It was just delightful.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It was actually quite revealing to me to review that journey that I've been on. I've never had this conversation with anyone before, so it's opening some things in me, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to reflect. Yeah.
It has really opened. It has opened up a lot. I really feel the transformation and opening. It's a permission for myself to access some of the things that are beautiful within me from spending that time with you.
Well, thank you very, very, very much.
All right, Amiga, we will talk more, and I'll reach out to you, and I encourage everyone to continue to enjoy what our Veronica as we're just having this opportunity. I love your 4-syllable name, Veronica. It just is. I just love saying it.
When I was a talk radio host, they thought about changing my name because I was the only radio DJ in the country that had a 4-syllable name. But they let me keep it.
It's just right. That's the timing. All right, dear. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Thank
and
you.
I will, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.